want to introduce Sandy Studebaker here. She's going to give our presentation in a minute with her cousin Kristen.
Okay, bear with me here. We did not have a rehearsal on this. And I'm a greenhorn at this sort of thing. I've displayed the wall chart before, but usually it was just a question and answer situation. And when I was approached about doing this, it was just a simple, brief presentation, and then we started getting fancy with PowerPoint and slides, so it's a learning experience. Thanks a lot, Steve. Kristen and I are going to give you something about our background, and then we're going to talk about the Studebaker family of South Bend, Indiana, whom you all know are responsible for these wonderful Studebaker vehicles that we drive now.
Right into the middle.
Right in? Okay. And then because there was some interest expressed in genealogy, I guess we're going to delve into that too, especially with this magic software, which is the program that I've been using. Okay, something about our background. I went to Wayne State University for a long time as a part-time student. In 72, I had a Bachelor of Science with a minor, Bachelor of Science in Education with a minor in Library Science. Then I got out into the field. I landed in a position with a medical library, realized I needed a lot more credentials behind me to keep pace with my colleagues. So went back to Wayne State University, more part-time, finally got a Master's in Library Science in 1985. Now, in a medical library, usually you're dealing with very recent information. How I gravitated from that to genealogy, where you want the old stuff, is beyond me, but some skills did transfer, thankfully. I was semi-retired in 1998, and I was invited to become a member of the board of the Studebaker Family National Association, which is based in Tip City, Ohio, which is just north of Dayton. I had learned about the association way back in 1970 and had been a member for a long time. And then in 98, when invited to be on the board, I was glad to accept it, and at the time the board members were looking to computerize the previously published information on the Studebaker family. It had been published in 3 volumes, and one lady here today brought one of those volumes. You have it handy? You can hold it up? That book was based on the research of some very early genealogists. It's over 900 pages, and it took 12 years to produce that book. It was a labor of love. 10 years later, the association came out with Volume 2, which supplemented and corrected some of the information in Volume 1. 10 years later, in 76, 86 was Volume 2, 96 was Volume 3. If anybody wanted to trace their ancestry, they have to look in multiple places in all 3 volumes. Very laborious, time-consuming task, if you can even find it. So the board and members in their wisdom decided we need to put this into a computerized database so that it's comprehensive. You don't have to look, you only have to look in one place to get the rest of it. Well, in my naivete, I went along with their thinking. It would only take 2 or 3 years to computerize all that data. More than 10 years later, I'm still working on it. Okay. Enough about that. So I do want to say, though, that in computerizing it, keying in all the data with the help of some data entry volunteers, I became very knowledgeable of the Clement line of the Studebakers, which Kristen and I are of the Clement line. And I'll get a little bit later, we'll talk about the other lines. And so in doing that work, I could see that there were errors in what had been published. There were holes to be filled. The Clement line data from those 3 volumes amounted to over 25,000 names. Currently I have over 29,000 names. So it keeps growing. There's no end. Now, also, I'm proud to say that I'm an owner of a 1962 Studebaker Lark that I bought from a distant cousin, and then my son did a body down restoration. Thank you. And there's a photo of me at a car show a couple of years ago that was on the General Motors Technical Center grounds in Warren, Michigan, where I was probably one of 2 Studebaker owners there. But they let me in. Okay, enough about me. Let's go on to the next slide and we'll give Kristen a chance.
Hi, I'm Kristen Studebaker, and I am the proud owner of a new to me 64 Hawk. I just took delivery of that this summer in July, and it was right before the Dream Cruise. We managed to squeak it in there, and that's where that picture was taken. Sandra was kind enough to get me on the board with the Studebaker family. I've been on the board since 2011, and now on the membership committee. And just so people know, anybody can join the Studebaker Family National Association as a member. We are having a national family reunion in Tip City, Ohio at the Homestead in 2016. It's usually in July. We haven't set a date yet. But all the Studebakers from around the world come to it, and it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of games and getting to know people and a lot of cars come. So you're more than welcome to join us. We'll have something in both newsletters about it once we get the date set. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to see the old cars at the Homestead. So that's pretty much my background. Genealogy is like a hobby of mine. I found some ancestors on my mother's line in Finland. It was really exciting to explore, and it's like a lot of Sandra knows too. It's like a treasure hunt. You find some pretty neat people in your path. So, like Sandra was saying, also this wall up here is the automobile Studebakers. This is from the automobile line, the Clement line. So feel free to peruse that as you like. And I'll hand it back to Sandra.
Wasn't a long enough break, Kristen. Okay, what we have up here now is a slide of one of the pages of the Studebaker Family National Association website. There are some interesting things on there. I will caution you, though, that from my perspective, it does need to be updated and enhanced, and I understand we have some board members who are going to be working on that ASAP. But the Studebaker Family National Association was begun in 1964. So this year we're celebrating the 50th anniversary. And it came about because of the coming together of the right people. It may be a stretch to liken it to the signers of the Constitution, but the members who initiated that organization, the ones who did the research, they were the right people at the right time, and they just performed a Herculean task on combining their previous research efforts into that first volume of the Studebaker family in America. And I do want to point out, and I'll mention it here in case I forget it later on, most of us, when we think about genealogy and doing our research, we think about going backward in time. We want to know who our ancestors were, where they came from, especially if they immigrated several generations ago. What country did they come from? For some reason, and I don't know why, the early genealogists and the movers and the shakers, once they found those immigrants who arrived in 1736, they wanted to know where all the descendants were. And so most of the Studebaker family in America is just that. It emanates from the 1736 immigrants who keep growing like a monster because we don't follow just the male lines, which are easier to trace. We also have an ingrained with us to try to follow the female lines as well. One of the things that I would point out that is on the website, if you do a little bit of digging, is the translation of a letter that was written in German by two of the early immigrants back to family in Germany. That letter was written in 1737. It was preserved by that family in Germany and eventually got to the hands of some of the descendants in America who was part of that amalgamation of the right people at the right time. So another thing that you'll find on the website, as Steve is showing us now, is an early incarnation of the wall chart that you see over here. Just as a test case, I put the C76 Studebaker line, the basic facts. It only has a little bit of information. Basic facts, it does not elaborate. What you see on the wall has 550 individuals. That you see on the website, I'm sure has less. Okay, we are scrolling through the individuals of the South Bend family. Somewhere along the line, I need to try to clarify what these unique numbers are and how to translate them. Perhaps since I mentioned it, might be as good a time to do it. The three male immigrants, 1736, one was Clement, his brother was Peter, their first cousin was Heinrich. So the downlines, the descendants, are either descendants of C, P, or H. And each generation is represented by a number. And within that generation, the arrangement is done by birth order. My number is C343722. It's quite interesting to go to these gatherings and you walk up and meet your distant cousins and say, "Hi, I'm C343722. Who are you?" But when you're trying to do research of all these Johns and Marys and Catherines and Peters, it's a godsend to have those numbers that are pertinent when you're doing downward descendancy research. I don't think they're going to work too well if you're working on your ancestral lines. So the immigrant Clement had a son, Clement Jr., who had a son, John Clement Studebaker. John Clement Studebaker and Rebecca Moeller had 13 children. 3 died young. The other 10 lived to adulthood. 5 brothers of South Bend, Indiana, and they also had 5 sisters. But a lot of people who are Studebaker aficionados don't even know that the sisters existed. But I did some research and found some interesting facts on several of them that I hope to share with you a little bit down the road here. Okay, the 5 brothers are pictured here in an early photograph. The oldest one, Henry, is seated in the middle. The next in line, this order rise, is Clement on the left. The one seated on the right is John Moeller, also known as Wheelbarrow Johnny. Of the two standing, the one on the left is Peter. The one on the right is Jacob, the youngest, who, for some reason, unfortunately, the youngest one died the first. He was only about 43 when he passed away. The longest-lived one was John Moeller on the right, who was the middle of the five. He died in 1917, I believe. So he was able to see the transition of the wagon-making company into automobile manufacture. This is Henry, and you can't read it, but that's a family group sheet containing the information on birth, marriage, death, burial of himself, his wife, and their children. The family group sheet is a standard format, a standard form that's used in collecting data as well as displaying it. Okay, if we're still with Clement here, he was married twice. His first wife was Charity Brott. They had two children. Unfortunately, the two children and his wife died quite young. Clement married a second time, Anna Milburn Harper, who was a widow. She had been previously married but had no children by that first marriage. They had 3 children together. One thing of note about Clement is that the beautiful home that he built late in his life when he had the money to do it it still exists, known as Tippecanoe Place, and it's currently a restaurant. If you ever get down to South Bend, please do visit it. I've been privileged to be given a tour of the building on a couple of occasions, and it's a wonderful historic house. Clement apparently was very civic-minded, and he was very charitable. He gave money to many, many causes, worthy causes. And I'm sure that many of you, or maybe all of you, received the Turning Wheels because you're a member of the Studebaker Drivers Club. In the Turning Wheels issue of May 2011, there's a nice article about Clement that was written by Andy Beckman, who's the archivist at the Studebaker National Museum. Okay, are we ready for Johnny Moeller? The thing that people seem to know about John Moeller Studebaker is his adventure out in California. When he was still a teenager, he got caught up with the gold fever rush, constructed a Conestoga wagon, gave it to the wagon train that was moving west, went out with them. And another little story is he arrived in Placerville, California with only 60 cents in his pocket. He started out with more money than that, but I understand he gambled it away on the way out there. So with only 50 cents in his pocket in what was then Hangtown, now Placerville, California, he was approached by a miner there saying that they needed wheelbarrows for the miners. Did John know how to build them? Well, he had built big wagons, so he figured he could also turn out some of these wheelbarrows too. He stayed there for 5 years selling these wheelbarrows, came back with $8,000 in gold nuggets, bought out his older brother Henry from the wagon making company, and got into business, and eventually became president of the company, and was, as I may have mentioned, was the longest lived. Okay, I think we have Peter Everest Studebaker here. He was married 3 times, but had children only by his first wife. There is a also an article about Peter in the April 2013 issue of Turning Wheels. If you want to take a look at that, it's another very well done article by Andy Beckman from the museum, who has access to all those wonderful archives. Peter is less well known than the three older brothers. He was pretty much responsible for establishing repositories or showrooms in various parts of the country. St. Louis, Missouri being one very important one. Peter, before he got involved with the company, he was on his own as a salesman. And he actually collaborated with a brother-in-law in that brother-in-law's business in Elkhart County, Indiana. Okay, Jacob, the youngest one, the baby. As I mentioned, he was the first to pass away, so we don't have too much research on him. He married Harriet Cord, and they had two daughters. The two daughters, one daughter had no children, and the other one had two sons. One died young. The other lived longer but didn't have any heirs, so that his line died out. The five sisters, this is, I had previously done, we had a vendor table. The Studebaker Family Association that I represented had a vendor table at a couple of SGC meets in South Bend. And I remember at the first one that I attended, some gentleman came up to me and said, I understand that the Studebaker name died out. And I could not figure that out. I couldn't put it into perspective. But what he was alluding to and what my later research indicates, and I have the handouts for you there, that the Studebaker surname indeed is defunct among the descendants of those five brothers. And that handout explains how that happened. But if you look on the other side, the females came to the rescue. They don't have Studebaker surname, but we sure had a lot of people with the name Studebaker as their middle name. Thanks to the ladies. So back up and I'll name the five. Okay, the two that are standing, one on the left is Rebecca. The one on the right is Maria. Neither of them married, so we assume they had no offspring. Today, we can't be sure of that anymore. But anyway, the two sisters lived together in the family home in South Bend until they passed away. And Maria, the youngest of the five sisters, was the last one to die. And upon her death, the city heard, I guess it was tradition that the bells would toll as many times as the person, as many years as they were. And she was in her 80s, I believe. So however many years old she was, that's how many times the bells tolled when she died. So the city thought very highly of all of the Studebakers, whether they were the brothers or the sisters. The three sisters who are seated at the table on the left is Nancy, who married a John Lucas. The one in the middle is Sarah, who married a Philip Welch. And the one on the right is Elizabeth, who married Reverend Witwer. I am going to point out some information on Nancy and Elizabeth from the research that I did because I found it very interesting. Nancy died in 1872. So that photograph of the five sisters had to have been before 1872, when infancy or photography was not that old. So we're fortunate to have a photo of those sisters. Nancy was married to a John Lucas when they were still living in Ashland, Ohio, but the family soon moved on to South Bend, and her husband John died fairly soon after that, but they had three children. One died at age 12, but a daughter and a son lived to adulthood. And what I find interesting about the daughter Emma is that she apparently was quite a scholar. She went to a girls' boarding school in Monroe, Michigan, long after most women would have discontinued their education. While she was at boarding school there, she met Benjamin Dansard, D-A-N-S-A-R-D. I'm probably not pronouncing it the way the locals would. But the Dansards were a well-known banking family. And through additional research of the Dansard line, I have come in contact with a living descendant of Emma Studebaker Lucas. Elizabeth was married to George Witwer, who was a minister with the German Baptist Brethren Church. Today, a lot of people probably don't know about the German Baptist Brethren. They have also had other names. You might know them as Church of the Brethren. In Pennsylvania, they were referred to as Dunkards. But Elizabeth and George, unlike Elizabeth's parents, had many children. They had 12. 3 died young. The remaining 9 consisted of 2 sisters and 7 brothers. And all 7 Witwer brothers were successful in their chosen careers. And the most extensive research exists for this Studebaker sister of all of them. They're very well documented. And it was at this time that some of the members of the South Bend generation were getting away from being associated with the German Baptist Brethren Church. The sisters seemed to stay loyal to it to their death, but the brothers, except for Henry, I think stayed with the faith, but the other 4 brothers who were very active in the company seemed to gravitate to the religions that their wives were members of. These are some statistics that Steve seems to be interested in. It tells the number of, thanks to the software program that we're using, we can easily generate these statistics in the various reports and charts, etc. The statistics here, I think, tell us that of what we're displaying, the generations that we are displaying here, which consists of 3 only, consists of 237 individuals. The wall chart over there displays at least 550. On the database of my computer, I have over 1,000 who are descendants of John Clement Studebaker, who is C76. Okay, how do we fit into the Studebaker family? Just ignore the photo if you can, please. Steve got his jollies putting that out. I'll get even with him at some future date, I hope. Thanks again to the genealogy software. That is a relationship chart showing on the left is my line of descent, being 8th generation from a common ancestor who was the immigrant Clement. On the right you see just 3 generations, the last one being being one of the 5 brothers. Yeah, being John Moeller, the middle one of the 5 brothers. So in the middle column, the program tells us what the relationship is. It says that I and John Moeller Studebaker are second cousins 4 generations removed, and that our common ancestor is the immigrant. So it's kind of like being a church-tail cousin, I think, or a distant cousin maybe you might call it. At the top is of my line. Clement the immigrant, 1736. He and his wife had 8 children born in this country. Of those 8 children, there were 3 males and 5 females. The males The first one was David. His number is C1 because he was the firstborn of those 8 children. The second son, who was the third born, Peter B., was my ancestor. His number is C3 because he's the son of Clement and was the third born. Getting over to the last column, Clement, who was Clement Jr., Clement II, if you will, was the 7th child of the immigrant Clement. His number is C7 because he was born the 7th of those 8 children. The 5 daughters have similar unique numbers depending on their order of birth in that first generation. Each succeeding generation carries the line forward, 3 digits at a time, and then there's a dash to make it easier to read the numbers. The dash doesn't mean anything else. So if you introduce yourself, as I sometimes do, as C343722, I'm telling you a lot about my ancestry, if you're familiar with the numbering system. And as I say, it's been a godsend in keeping all these Johns and Marys straight in the genealogy database.
Sandra and I are cousins. First cousins, one generation removed. She and my father are first cousins, of course. And we shared William Leroy, who was my great-grandfather, as a relative. So we are very closely related. In the same line, you'll see our numbers are pretty much the same except for the last 2. So it's really a great way to categorize how we are related back to the Clement immigrant, which starts with a C. And you'll see that the automobile people also start with a C because they are also related to that Clement immigrant. We veered off on the Peter line from Clement, and the automobiles, of course, stayed true to the Clement line. So we don't leave out the Peter line and the Heinrich line. Among the 1736 immigrants, in addition to Clement, which of course we're partial to because we're descended from that firstborn, another Clement's brother was Peter. Peter and his wife had lots of kiddies. Unfortunately, only 3 of them survived enough so that their descendants could be traced. But they multiplied rapidly, and as far as we know, there are a whole lot more descendants of the immigrant Peter line than there are of the Clement line. And then there was the first cousin Heinrich. Heinrich, unfortunately, was massacred in an Indian raid during the French and Indian Wars. Both he and his wife, and at least one of their children. But 2 or 3 of the children did survive, so there are descendants of the immigrant Heinrich line, but their numbers are far fewer. As that handout shows you there about the Studebaker surname being defunct in descendants of the 5 South Bend brothers, there still are a lot of other people around with the name Studebaker who, if you go back far enough in time, there is a relationship. And as far as anybody knows from the research that's been done over the last 100 years, there were only those immigrants in 1736. We don't know of any that came after that. So all of those Studebakers in America are descended from, whether they have the name or not, descended from those 3 males that immigrated. Okay, I guess we were going to talk about the software that was used. Early on in the project, I spent a good year gearing up, trying to figure out what I needed to do and how to go about it. And part of that includes a whole lot of research on the various genealogy software programs that were on the market. Fortunately, I found a good one and have stayed with it, and it has evolved into something that's very sophisticated but very easy to use.
very inexpensive too. $29.99, is that what it costs now? This Magic is in version 6 right now. Its predecessor it's still the same creator. Lance Busby is his name. First he had family origins, and then he kind of lost control of the distribution rights. So he morphed it into what he calls This Magic. And as I say, now it's in its 6th version. Lots of bells and whistles. You can, in addition to all these charts, reports, you can create a print book. You can create something online, post it online. All of that is feasible. Now there are other programs that do pretty much the same thing. Some are less easy to use though than This Magic. Upon Steve's urging, he thought there would be an interest in the topic of genealogy in general. I think that there are a number of us who are deeply into it, maybe some less so. I love this slide that Steve put together, and I wonder if anybody can spot anything amiss.
Genealogy is spelled wrong in the first line.
Genealogy is spelled wrong in the first line.
You are absolutely correct. And probably most people who are new to the research of their ancestry are going to spell genealogy the way it sounds, with that O that doesn't belong in there. But the definition listed from Merriam-Webster does spell it as it is normally spelled. Okay, how can you learn about genealogy? As I mentioned to Steve, there are people who have been doing it for 30 or 40 years and they're still learning. So don't expect it to be a piece of cake just because you can go on the internet and find all sorts of information that may or may not be correct. But those who are serious about it, will buy books, they'll take classes, they'll join genealogy societies. I said that I would mention some do's and don'ts. Just one do, one do that it's carried over. Do start with what you already know. You have some knowledge of your own family. Write it down if it isn't already. Interview family members, especially senior family members, for what they remember. So start close to home and then branch out. Don't think you're going to jump on the internet and find it all there ready for you. It may be, but it may not be correct, may not be accurate either. And another emphasis is to cite your sources. Have verifiable documentation of where all these facts came from so that it can be verified and you can prove it that you're right and the other guy is wrong because you can refer back to the original birth record or death record or census or land records. And a lot of those sources do not accompany what a lot of folks are putting up on Ancestry.com. And there's a lot of copying and copycatting. So let the buyer beware.